Next, we have to present our Shining Star Award. And this is a very special award for the industry, and we get a lot of great nominations every year. You can nominate an individual, a group of individuals, or an affiliate. And this year was a very unanimous decision by our board of directors, and we've got a very special person to come up and make the introduction, and I would have thought he'd be walking up here by now. Anyway, Jerry, come on, man. You're killing me up here. Anyway, you all know our good friend Jerry Forstner. Jerry's been around this industry for a long, long time. You all know him, but Jerry's going to make the presentation of the 2018 Shining Star Award. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, bud. The award's right under. Where is it? Okay. Well, the only reason they allowed me to do this representation for Steve today is because I'm the oldest one here, and I'm the only one that knows all the things that Steve has done all these years. So here we go. It's going to take me a minute because this man has been Alpaca personified for a long, long, long time. Now, I was on the board for 7 years, and after 7 years, I was absolutely burnt out. But before AOA was in existence, there was a thing called AOBA, and AOBA was the Alpaca Breeders Association. And Steve started on the board of directors of AOBA in 2001, and he was on the board until 2009. At which time he went on to the board of AOA, which was the registry, and he was on the board of AOA from 2009 to 2011, at which time he went on to the new merged board, which is now called AOA, which when we merged AOBA and AOA together, and he's been on this board for 6 years. Now, if you're counting like I was, he's been on your board of directors for 17 years. Now, I don't know if you guys can understand that, but 17 years. During that time, when AOBA first started, we were managed by a company in Denver, in Colorado. And one day they decided that we were too much for them and gave us their notice. With about a month's notice, they were quitting. So Steve was on the board at that time, and he helped us move the board from them to another particular company that managed it. And from there, we created our own AOBA at Nashville, Tennessee. And that is the beginning of where we started to be an independent company and AOBA. Steve was very instrumental in that. In addition, when we first started, ARI was part of the Llama Association, and they had all their blood cards done at UC Davis in California, and that was pretty much a disaster. They didn't care much about the alpaca part, except they charged us a hell of a lot of money, and we were their money source. The llama industry was dead, and the only one they had making money was alpacas for them. So Steve and actually my wife Libby worked very hard, and we moved them from UC Davis to the current system of doing our own blood cards and having our own registry. He was very instrumental in that. I don't know if any of you know that Steve is a doctor. He's and one of his great accomplishments as a doctor for AOBA and AOA was that there was a big crisis in our industry for a while with bovine infectious diarrhea, which is called BVD. He did a huge amount of research on that, and he proved all the other veterinarians wrong as to the necessity of the practice we currently have. We have BV testing, and we are now one of the only livestock industries in the whole world that has bovine diarrhea under control, and that was all Steve's doing. He did it all. Early on, before Facebook, I don't know if any of you know there was a time before Facebook, but there was, and we had what we called Alpaca Site back then. And Alpaca Site was basically emails where everybody emailed in their questions and problems. And Steve got to be known as Dr. Dork. And Dr. Dork answered everybody's questions. He must have spent 100 hours a week answering questions for people on medical things for their alpacas. And early on in our industry, when I've been in it now for 25 years, nobody knew anything about how to take care of these critters. We've learned so much, and we pass it on, and we are now, everybody shares with everybody. So if you have a question, us old timers, all of us old guys, if you ask us, we'll tell you what we learned the hard way usually. And Dr. Dork helped about all of us get to where we are today. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So he's not only been on our boards, but he's been on his affiliate board. He's been their treasurer, their secretary, and all those kinds of things. He's been on the nominating committee for years on end. And helped shape the boards that we have today. I know of a more deserving person in the whole industry to get this award. And I personally love you, Stephen. Thank you.
You know, there's an old expression that is apt at this time. My father would be so pleased to hear those comments, but my mother, she'd believe them. Anyway, I'm very pleased to get this award, but I also recognize that I follow in many people's steps who are, we have people here, let's see, Faye Farley, Stacy Chavez, Jerry and Libby have gotten the Shining Star Award, and boy, I feel there's an local expression called, I feel like I'm in tall cotton, and when you compare myself to those people. I also want to express my appreciation to the board, to Don, our president, and our executive director, and all the people that make the work for you guys just go. It's been a real treasure for me to represent you. Now, I want to stop talking about myself. I want to talk about you. 20 years ago, when I first started in this industry, we had animals that we were so proud of. They had bare legs, bare bellies. You could find a spot on their side that was fine. But if you go up to the withers or to the rump, there was absolutely complete change. There was no uniformity, but we were so proud. What you guys have done in 20 years by going to shows and participating in activities and going out there without having an animal science background or genetics has been outstanding. And if you look at the animals here today, it proves the point. The best of animals back 20 years ago, they'd be bumped today from a regional show. I mean, they were terrible. But what you guys have done is you've seen the future and you've moved onward. Now, there have been tough times. Any of you have lost a cria when you've spent days and nights trying to get that cria to live. It is, and if you haven't had it happen, it's tough. But most of us have had this happen, and yet you move onward. You say, okay, maybe I'm not going to repeat that breeding, or I'm going to learn from this, or I'm going to learn from what has happened. I'm not going to make this particular mistake or this. It's not that an error, but you learn through sometimes, and those crias' legacies are the next crias who survive. You've done things to participate in affiliates. You've donated to our organization. You've just done a tremendous job. So when I sit here and look at this, and I look at what you guys have done over the past 20 years, it's astounding. Now, some of you younger members, and by the way, I was so pleased to go through the barn today and see so many new fresh faces, because that is the future of what we're going to be doing. Those fresh faces, you new members, you're just doing great. So I've got a few things that I want to ask of you. One, when you sell an animal, get them to join AOA. For example, a little while ago, we had a senator who wanted to remove the agriculture exemption from alpacas. Not goats, not sheep, but just alpacas. And Bud immediately sent out press issues, and it died. That protects you. We have a tremendous program. The senator's perspective died, not Bud. Anyway, so it was a remarkable thing for us to immediately respond to that. So again, what you are participating in when you join AOA is that force. So that's one thing I'd like you to do. The second thing I'd like you to do is those of you who have gotten blue ribbons, and especially those championship banners, I need your fleeces at the National Fleece Show. We have to show other countries that we too are going to have a superb industry. And quite frankly, Australia is beating us. With a smaller herd size, they have developed a commodity market, and they sell their fleeces for far more than what we're selling for. So instead of research and development, we need to do research and duplicate, as it were. So we need to think about doing that. So that is another thing. The last thing is that we need to work hard on our fiber industry. And this is going to be tough, because I know many of you have farm stores and you get your goods in from Peru. Very nice goods, as a matter of fact. But does that help our national fleece situation? No. So we have to make that transition to make it go. And I'm convinced that you guys can come up with a good solution and move onward. Now, do you notice the theme, onward? Notice that theme of onward? You guys are doing it. And one of the things when people send me emails and talk to me about this little silly disease called cancer I've got, I always answer their emails with onward with an exclamation mark, because it is that positivism that I feel, and boy, have I felt it this evening. So thank you all. And again, I end my speech with just one little word: onward. Thank you all.